Hey man, the moment you stop texting a woman, something subtle but powerful shifts in her internal world. She may not show it, she may not admit it, she may even pretend she didn't notice, but she feels the break in the rhythm instantly. Because women are sensitive to patterns, not words. They track consistency, not effort. They feel energy before they analyze behavior, and your silence interrupts a familiar pattern she felt comfortable with. Suddenly, her mind starts wandering. She begins replaying the last conversation, trying to pinpoint if anything felt off. She questions whether she said something wrong. She wonders if your tone changed earlier without her noticing. She feels the absence, not because she's deeply invested, but because she was accustomed to the emotional presence you were providing. What confuses her most is that she didn't expect it. Women assume that once a man shows interest, that interest will remain on demand, steady, predictable, accessible whenever she decides she wants it. Your silence disrupts that assumption with shocking clarity. It introduces uncertainty into a space she thought she controlled, and uncertainty, for a woman, is a deeply emotional experience. It doesn't feel like rejection, it feels like mystery, and mystery pulls her attention in a way constant effort never could. She finds herself checking her phone more often, not because she wants to reply, but because she wants to confirm whether you reached out. She won't message you yet, but you've already shifted her focus back onto you. As the silence continues, something else begins to happen. She starts imagining the reason for it. Women rarely sit with unanswered questions. They fill the silence with their own interpretations, and those interpretations quickly evolve into emotional realities. She wonders if you lost interest. She wonders if someone else caught your attention. She wonders if you're upset. She wonders if you finally decided to stop putting in effort. And these thoughts aren't logical, they're instinctive. A woman's mind doesn't handle uncertainty with calm logic. It creates narratives to regain a sense of control. And ironically, the moment she starts wondering what happened to your attention, attraction begins to bloom in a way it never did when you were constantly available. Women expect early communication to flow effortlessly, and when it doesn't, they start analyzing the meaning behind the disruption. She remembers moments you showed excitement. She recalls how eagerly you replied in the beginning. She replays how engaged you seemed when she shared something personal. And now, faced with your silence, she questions whether she misread you. This gap between her expectation and your new behavior triggers something deeper than curiosity. It triggers emotional awareness. She becomes aware that your attention had value. She becomes aware that she liked your presence more than she admitted. She becomes aware that losing your energy feels heavier than she expected. Your silence forces her to confront the truth she avoided while you were texting her consistently, that she was comfortable, not necessarily appreciative. Women grow accustomed to effort quickly. They normalize consistency even faster. When you were texting regularly, she didn't need to put in effort. She didn't need to evaluate how she felt. She didn't need to express interest. But silence disrupts comfort. It forces her to examine the connection rather than coast through it. And the moment she begins examining the connection, she begins feeling something, because introspection is where emotional attachment begins. After a certain point, her thoughts shift from curiosity to self-reflection. She wonders if she was too dry in her responses. She wonders if she showed enough appreciation. She wonders if she seemed uninterested without realizing it. This is the moment when your silence becomes more powerful than any message you could have sent, because now she isn't thinking about whether you like her. She's thinking about whether she ruined something she didn't know she valued. That internal shift is where attraction begins to deepen, not through pressure, not through grand gestures, but through the calm absence of your attention. Eventually, she begins feeling a subtle discomfort, a kind of emotional itch she can't scratch. She feels the space where your presence used to be. She feels the lightness of the conversation that is now missing. She senses the difference in her mood, even though she can't explain it. Women often mistake this feeling for annoyance or confusion, but underneath it is something else: realization. Realization that she did in fact enjoy the dynamic more than she admitted. Realization that she looked forward to your messages more than she showed. Realization that she didn't expect to miss something she barely nurtured. At this stage, her ego and her emotions begin conflicting. Her ego wants to believe she doesn't care. It tells her she can replace you. It reminds her of the attention she gets elsewhere. But her emotions know the truth. Something felt balanced when you were communicating, and that balance is missing now. Women don't fall for men through intense conversations. They fall through emotional impressions, and silence creates a stronger impression than any overexpressed interest. The absence challenges her ego. The absence exposes her desire. The absence forces her to feel instead of assume. As more time passes, she begins strategizing internally. Should she text you first? Should she wait? Should she post something to see if you react? Should she respond differently when you eventually message? Her mind becomes a quiet battlefield of internal questions. She's not worried about losing you. She's worried about why she suddenly cares. That question destabilizes her. Because the last time you spoke, she felt in control. She felt that she set the pace. Now she's unsure, and uncertainty is the birthplace of emotional attachment. If your silence continues, she reaches a point where she subtly shifts her behavior in your direction. She checks who viewed her stories. She chooses words more carefully in the conversations you still have. She puts effort into her appearance subconsciously. She becomes more emotionally aware every time your name appears on her screen. And all of this happens without you lifting a finger, not because you ignored her, but because your silence forced her to see something she never would have noticed while you were overexpressing, that she valued your presence, but only realized it through its absence. As your silence stretches a little longer, she begins to feel something she wasn't prepared for, a shift in the emotional power dynamic. When you were texting consistently, she subconsciously assumed she held the upper hand, not out of arrogance, but because she never had to question your investment. Now, with your absence, she becomes aware of how much control she doesn't have. That realization is unsettling. She starts paying attention to the emotional gap you left behind. She starts evaluating the times she didn't respond properly, the moments she acted indifferent because she assumed you'd always come back. Suddenly, she sees how effortlessly she could lose something she thought was guaranteed, and for the first time, she feels the weight of needing to show up differently. During this phase, she'll try to convince herself that she doesn't care. She'll tell herself she's just being curious, not emotionally affected. She'll distract herself with friends, conversations, or social media, trying to bury the feeling behind activity. But the quieter moments betray her. When she's alone, when the distractions fade, when her mind settles, she begins replaying the interaction in slow motion. She analyzes the consistency you gave. She compares it with the silence you're giving now. She wonders if you changed your mind, but more importantly, she wonders why that possibility bothers her. That is when she starts realizing that your attention meant something she didn't acknowledge earlier. At this point, your silence begins creating emotional contrast. Women feel deeply through contrast. The difference between presence and absence, attention and silence, effort and space. While you were texting consistently, she felt emotionally comfortable, even numb to the dynamic. Now, without the constant reassurance from your messages, she becomes emotionally awake. It's almost like you turned off a background noise she didn't realize she depended on. The quiet forces her brain to focus. It forces her to feel the subtle emotional withdrawals she usually avoids. It forces her to acknowledge that something now feels incomplete, and that incompleteness pulls her thoughts toward you with growing intensity. The longer your silence lasts, the more she begins to evaluate her own behavior. She wonders if she misread your interest. She wonders if she was too passive. She wonders if she treated you in a way that made you feel replaceable. But underneath those thoughts is a deeper fear. The fear that someone else may now be receiving the energy she once ignored. That possibility is what makes her rethink everything. Women rarely feel urgency when a man is texting them consistently. They feel urgency when the connection is no longer guaranteed. Your silence makes her realize that you are not a man waiting around. You are a man capable of stepping back without resentment, without argument, without emotional collapse. That to her is quietly intimidating. As her introspection deepens, she starts looking at you differently. She starts noticing traits she overlooked before. Your independence, your self-control, your emotional grounding. These weren't obvious to her when she had constant access to you, but now that she can't predict your behavior, your value becomes clearer. When a man stops texting, a woman doesn't just miss his words, she misses his emotional availability. She misses the comfort of knowing someone is thinking of her. She misses the subtle validation she never admitted she needed. Silence strips away the surface and reveals what she actually felt underneath. Now her thoughts begin to follow a pattern. First curiosity, then confusion, then reflection, and now vulnerability. She wonders whether she should text you first. She debates sending a casual opening. She practices messages in her mind, something light, something harmless, something that doesn't expose how much she's been thinking. But she hesitates because reaching out would mean revealing a loss of control. She knows you'll sense the shift. She knows messaging first exposes that your silence affected her. And if there's one thing modern dating has conditioned women to avoid, it's being emotionally vulnerable before the man is. Yet the more she hesitates, the more the tension builds inside her. Behind all of this is a psychological principle most men never notice. Women interpret male absence as emotional independence. When you stop texting, she doesn't assume you're weak or hurt. She assumes you're busy, focused, moving forward. And that assumption subconsciously places you in a higher psychological category. A man who doesn't need constant communication appears stronger. A man who can go silent without explanation appears more self-assured. A man who doesn't chase clarity holds more perceived value. She begins to compare you with the men who flood her phone. They feel predictable, you feel uncertain, and uncertainty is the birthplace of attraction because it pulls her imagination into the space your absence creates. As this continues, she starts noticing her emotions behaving unpredictably. Some moments she feels calm, dismissing the situation entirely. Other moments she feels irritated, not at you, but at herself, for caring. But the most telling moments are when she feels a quiet pull toward you, a kind of emotional curiosity she can't shake off. She replays the energy you showed, the tone of your messages, the consistency you offered. She remembers the feeling of being understood or appreciated in ways she didn't fully register. And through that reflection, she begins to realize something she didn't admit earlier. She enjoyed the connection more than she allowed herself to feel. Now, something else enters her mind: accountability. She begins questioning whether she gave the connection the same emotional presence you offered. She thinks about the times she responded late without good reason, the times she acted distracted, the times she kept you in emotional limbo while expecting you to remain steady. Silence forces self-awareness, and when a woman becomes self-aware in a connection, attraction deepens quickly, because now she isn't thinking about whether you are enough, she's thinking about whether she was enough. That shift is rare, and it happens only when a man stops feeding the dynamic with constant effort. By now, your silence has completely reshaped her internal narrative. What once felt like a casual connection now feels meaningful. What once felt predictable now feels uncertain. What once felt safe now feels fragile. She doesn't want to admit it, but the emotional balance has shifted toward you. You're no longer the man trying to earn her time. You're the man she doesn't want to lose. And ironically, you didn't get there by saying more, texting more, or proving more. You got there by stepping back, not out of strategy, but out of respect for your own value. Silence didn't make her chase, it made her realize what she took for granted, and realization is far more powerful than pursuit. As your silence lingers, she starts to see the situation differently, not from the angle of romance, but from the angle of self-worth. She begins wondering what made you so comfortable stepping back. Was it something she did? Was it something she overlooked? Was it her attitude, her lack of effort, her emotional distance? She becomes hyper-aware of her own behavior in a way she never was when you were texting consistently. And this is the irony. When you were present, she never analyzed her actions. When you became silent, she saw herself with stark clarity. Silence is not a punishment, it's a mirror. It reflects her behavior back to her, and she can't help but notice the gaps she left unaddressed. Soon, small moments throughout her day start reminding her of you. A song, a phrase, a joke, a quiet evening, everything seems to echo a memory of your presence. Not because you manipulated her emotions, but because her mind is now trying to reconnect with something it subconsciously valued. She becomes aware of how much emotional space your conversations occupied. Even if she had no intention of building something deeper, your presence gave her a sense of emotional consistency that is now missing. The absence becomes louder than the messages ever were. And the fact that she feels this shift, despite telling herself she didn't care much, changes everything. She now begins to observe your behavior with a new intensity. She checks whether you're active online. She watches if you've posted anything. She looks for signs that you're communicating with others. The silence has heightened her awareness of your existence. She tries to hide this curiosity from herself, but it grows anyway. She wants to know if you've emotionally moved on. She wants to know if your silence is personal or simply part of your life. She wants to know if someone else is now receiving the version of you she once had. Whether she admits it or not, she feels a small burn of jealousy, not because she had a claim to you, but because she now realizes she wanted one. This emotional tension begins turning into a deeper internal conflict. On one side, she wants to reach out, break the silence, and regain the connection. On the other side, She fears losing dignity or appearing too eager. She starts bargaining with herself. Maybe he's busy. Maybe he's giving me space. Maybe he's waiting for me to show something first. She rationalizes your silence while simultaneously feeling pulled toward you. And that's when another truth hits her. She never thought about you this seriously. When you were actively texting her, your silence created an emotional weight your presence alone never could. It made the connection meaningful because it forced her to feel. Eventually, she begins rewriting the story in her mind. What she once labeled as just talking now becomes something I might have mishandled. She reinterprets memories with new value. The way you listened, the way you responded, the steadiness you showed, the patience you had, all of these qualities start standing out because they're no longer readily accessible. She used to treat these things as something she deserved automatically. Now she sees them as something she lost through complacency. This reframing is powerful. People value what they nearly lose far more than what they easily receive. Her ego now enters a second phase, no longer defensive, but reflective. Instead of telling herself she doesn't care, she begins admitting the truth in small doses. She liked your attention more than she expected. She valued the connection more than she expressed. She felt more curiosity toward you than she outwardly showed. And that honesty, even if quiet and private, brings her closer to reaching out. But she still battles one internal question. Why did he stop? If she believed you were weak, desperate, or easily manipulated, she wouldn't care. But your silence didn't come from emotional instability. It came from emotional grounding. That difference makes her rethink everything she assumed about you. Now comes the emotional tipping point. She starts imagining scenarios of reconnecting. She thinks of what she would say if you text again. She debates whether she should lightly joke about the silence or act like nothing happened. She rehearses messages in her mind, trying to craft something that doesn't reveal how much she noticed. But beneath the rehearsing is an undeniable truth. She wants the connection to restart, not because she's lonely, but because she finally recognizes your emotional value. The same consistency she once overlooked is now the thing she misses most. And this is exactly where most men misunderstand the power of silence. It's not about manipulating her emotions. It's not about punishing her. It's not about playing games. It's about removing your energy long enough for her to feel what that energy was worth. Presence can be taken for granted. Absence never is. When a man stops texting, he isn't controlling her. He's simply giving her space to reveal what she actually feels. And in that space, her interest either grows or disappears. Most women don't disappear. They reflect, then return with a different kind of energy. Once she reaches the stage where your silence becomes emotionally significant, she begins monitoring whether you seem unaffected. If she senses that you've remained calm, busy, and unbothered, it increases her attraction in ways she doesn't fully understand. A man who remains composed during silence communicates one thing clearly: he has a life, he has purpose, he isn't emotionally dependent, he doesn't crumble over distance, he doesn't need her attention to feel valuable. This kind of emotional resilience is rare, and rarity creates magnetism. Women are drawn to what is stable yet uncertain, accessible yet independent, warm yet self-contained. Your silence displays all of that without saying a word. Finally, she arrives at the point she never expected. She begins missing you. Not the text, not the emojis. You. The energy you brought, the steadiness you carried, the feeling of being understood without having to ask for it. And that realization carries a weight that makes her reconsider how she approached the connection from the start. Your silence didn't push her away. It brought her closer to the truth she avoided. She cared more than she acted. She valued you more than she expressed. And she underestimated the impact of your presence until it was no longer there. Now the balance has shifted. She's no longer wondering whether you like her. She's wondering whether she waited too long to show she likes you back. As her thoughts circle around the silence, she begins to feel a kind of emotional tension she can't easily ignore. A tension created not by what you said, but by what you didn't say. When you were texting her consistently, she always knew where she stood. She could predict your responses. She could expect your attention. She could rely on you to fill the quiet moments with conversation. But now, faced with the emptiness where your messages used to be, she's forced to confront a truth she rarely encounters. Your attention was not free. It held value. It carried weight. And now that she no longer has unlimited access to it, she feels the emotional difference in a way that's almost physical. Questions she never allowed herself to consider begin surfacing. Did I misjudge him? Was he more important to me than I realized? Why do I suddenly feel like something is missing? That internal shift is the beginning of emotional investment, the kind that only reveals itself after space has been created. The silence now pushes her into deeper reflection, the kind she avoided when interactions were flowing effortlessly. She begins thinking about her own patterns, not because you asked her to, but because the quiet demands honesty. She wonders whether she gave enough effort. She wonders if she showed appreciation for the consistency you offered. She wonders whether she unintentionally signaled disinterest through her tone or timing. This is the moment when she stops viewing herself as the passive recipient of your attention and starts seeing herself as an active participant who might have failed to nurture something meaningful. The silence becomes a catalyst for accountability, not guilt. And that sense of responsibility is one of the strongest internal motivators that pulls women back toward a man they once treated casually. Now, the silence begins reshaping the narrative she has about you entirely. She always thought she understood the kind of man you were. Steady, available, predictable. But your silence reveals a side she didn't expect. Restraint, self-respect, independence, emotional discipline. These traits weren't visible when you were constantly present, because consistency often disguises strength as availability. But when you step back without explanation, without drama, without resentment, she sees that you didn't give her access out of desperation, you gave it out of choice. And if it was a choice, it means you can choose differently. That realization makes her see you through a new lens, one that magnifies your value instead of shrinking it. This is also where the first seeds of regret begin to form. She thinks back to the moments she responded slowly or half-heartedly, not because she didn't care, but because she believed she had unlimited time. She remembers the time she treated the conversation lightly, assuming your interest would remain constant regardless of her effort. Your silence exposes the fragility of that assumption. She begins feeling the discomfort of understanding that she contributed to the current distance, not entirely, but enough to feel responsible. And because women process emotional regret more deeply than they show, this internal discomfort begins to grow quietly every day you remain silent. She won't admit it out loud, but she now sees that she was careless with something she should have handled with more sincerity. As her regret grows, something else begins to take shape, an emotional pull toward your unknown life. She begins imagining what you might be doing. She wonders who else you might be talking to. She thinks about whether you're happier without her presence, whether the silence feels as heavy for you as it does for her, and the more she imagines your emotional world without her in it, the more she feels compelled to return. Humans don't miss what they lose, they miss what they imagine has evolved without them. She imagines your life continuing smoothly, your mood unaffected, your energy redirected. That image sparks both curiosity and longing, because nothing is more attractive than someone who grows in your absence. The silence now begins to work on an even deeper psychological level. It forces her to experience the connection from a different position, one where she is no longer the center, you're no longer orbiting her rhythm, you're no longer adjusting your pace to match her availability. She now feels the shift in gravity. She feels herself revolving around your presence, checking for signs, waiting for movement, hoping for initiation. This reversal isn't about dominance, it's about equilibrium. You stopped carrying the emotional load, and that allowed the connection to rebalance naturally. Now she perceives you as someone she wants to understand, someone she wants to re-engage, someone she doesn't want drifting too far from her reach. And as the silence stretches just a little longer, she begins analyzing not just your absence, but the way you exited. You didn't pull away with bitterness, you didn't express frustration, you didn't beg for attention, you didn't dramatize the distance, you simply became quiet. That kind of silence is powerful because it communicates emotional strength without a single word. It tells her you're not desperate. It tells her you're not chasing validation. It tells her your world doesn't collapse because one person becomes inconsistent. And this realization makes her see you as emotionally secure in a way she didn't recognize before. Emotional security is rare. The rarer it is, the more attractive it becomes. By now she begins feeling a type of pressure, not from you, but from her own emotional conscience. She knows she could reach out, but she hesitates because she wants to approach you differently. She wants her message to be meaningful. She wants her tone to reflect sincerity. She wants her effort to match the value she now sees in you. She doesn't want to come off as though she's simply bored or lonely. She wants you to feel the difference. She wants to show that your silence didn't push her away, but pulled something real out of her. That pressure doesn't feel negative, it feels like growth. She wants to return to the connection as a better version of herself. And while all of this is happening inside her, she also begins to feel a quiet fear. The fear that she may have waited too long. She worries that the distance might have shifted you into a new emotional chapter. She worries that the silence may have helped you see your own worth more clearly. She worries that you may now view the connection differently. This fear doesn't paralyze her, it motivates her. Because when a woman fears losing what she values, something awakens in her that wasn't there before. Emotional urgency. And emotional urgency is far more powerful than curiosity or attraction. It pushes her toward action. Finally, she reaches a point where the silence is no longer just something she notices, it's something she feels. Its weight settles into every thought she has about you. And in that emotional space, she realizes the truth. She never acknowledged when you were texting her consistently. She didn't lose interest. She never had the chance to feel it properly, because your constant presence didn't give her room to experience absence. Now she feels it fully. She feels the difference. She feels the value of your energy. And now she wants to bring something back into the connection, not out of obligation, not out of expectation, but out of genuine desire. The silence didn't drive her away. It revealed how much she wanted a place in your world. As more time passes, she begins to revisit every interaction you ever had, not because she's trying to gather evidence, but because she's trying to reconnect with the emotional rhythm she once felt around you. She replays your voice in her mind, the way you carried conversations, the subtle confidence in your tone, the steadiness you brought without even realizing it. She remembers the comfort she felt when she knew you were there, available, invested. Now she feels the contrast between then and now so sharply that it almost startles her. The connection she once took for granted now feels distant in a way she didn't anticipate. This reflection slowly transforms into a deeper recognition. You weren't just someone she chatted with. You were someone who added emotional structure to her days, and the loss of that structure creates a quiet ache that keeps resurfacing, no matter how often she tries to distract herself. Soon, the silence begins to challenge the very narrative she once believed about herself. The narrative that she was in control, that she dictated the pace, that she held the upper hand. Now she sees that her reactions are no longer based on curiosity or habit, they're based on emotional impact. She realizes she wasn't as detached as she pretended to be. She wasn't as casual as she tried to appear. What she thought was mere interest has grown into a deeper attachment, one that only revealed itself when the connection was interrupted. And this realization humbles her in a way she didn't expect. It forces her to see that she wasn't evaluating you fairly. She was evaluating the version of you that was always available. The silent version forces her to see you as someone she must re-earn, not someone she can automatically access. That shift changes everything. This shift also awakens a different type of introspection, one where she confronts the truth about how she handled the connection when she had full access to it. She sees now that she may have downplayed your importance, not because she didn't feel anything, but because she didn't want to appear vulnerable. She remembers the moments she held back intentionally, the replies she delayed, the enthusiasm she softened to avoid looking too invested. And now, sitting inside the quiet you created, she recognizes how those choices diluted something real. The silence highlights every missed opportunity, every moment she could have shown more appreciation but didn't. This self-awareness doesn't make her regret meeting you, it makes her regret not giving more when she had the chance. The silence becomes even more influential as she starts noticing how other conversations feel different from the one she had with you. She compares the emotional weight, the level of engagement, the spark, the connection. She realizes that others don't give her the same mental stimulation or the same emotional security. She feels bored faster, distracted easier, uninterested more quickly. The absence of your energy forces her to acknowledge the uniqueness of what you brought. She might try talking to someone new, but it doesn't hit with the same depth. She may scroll through chats, hoping to feel something meaningful, but nothing holds her attention long enough. Without meaning to, she starts measuring everything else against you, and that comparison always leaves her feeling that something is missing. At this point, she begins wondering about your emotional world with more intensity. She wonders if you ever think about her, if your silence is a sign of indifference or self-respect, if you've already moved on to other priorities or someone else entirely. Each scenario triggers a different emotional response: curiosity, concern, jealousy, confusion. She tries to reassure herself that you must still think about her, but the uncertainty eats at her. This uncertainty becomes the emotional hook that pulls her deeper into her feelings. She realizes she doesn't want you to fade into a memory or become just another person she once talked to. She wants her presence to matter to you, and that desire grows stronger every day you remain silent. Eventually, the silence begins working on something far deeper than attraction. It begins shaping her respect for you. She respects that you didn't beg for attention. She respects that you didn't lash out or guilt trip her. She respects that you had the emotional discipline to remove yourself without trying to control the situation. This respect carries far more weight than desire alone because it elevates you in her mind. Anyone can show interest, but not everyone can show restraint. And restraint is what separates men who are emotionally grounded from men who are emotionally dependent. She begins seeing you as someone whose presence was a gift, not a guarantee, and that makes her value the connection in a way she never did before. Now the silence no longer feels like just an interruption, it feels like a test. She unknowingly failed. She begins thinking about how you perceived her behavior. She wonders if she seemed unappreciative, inconsistent, or detached. She worries that her casual responses may have come across as disinterest. She starts imagining the moment you decided to step back, wondering what triggered the shift, wondering whether she could have done something differently. This self-questioning isn't insecurity, it's emotional clarity. She knows she played a role in the distance, and for the first time, she feels the weight of that responsibility. This internal accountability is what transforms short-lived fascination into long-term longing. With this clarity comes a new emotion, longing. Not longing for attention, but longing for connection, specifically your connection. She misses the way conversations flowed. She misses the subtle warmth in your texts. She misses the sense of familiarity. She misses the effortless comfort that only appears when two people share genuine chemistry. She doesn't just miss your words, she misses who she felt like when she was talking to you. You brought out a version of her that felt valued, seen, and engaged. Now she feels the absence of that version, and the more she notices it, the stronger her desire becomes to reconnect, not out of loneliness, but out of emotional alignment. By now the silence becomes impossible for her to ignore. It's in her thoughts when she wakes up. It's in her mind when she checks her phone. It's in her emotions when she considers reaching out. She feels the distance not as rejection, but as consequence, a consequence of not treating the connection with the sincerity it deserved. This emotional consequence pushes her into a new level of vulnerability. She wants to reach out, but she wants to do it in a way that reflects growth, not impulse. She wants you to feel that something has changed inside her, that she no longer sees you as an option, but as someone she genuinely values. Her message, when it finally arrives, won't be casual, it will be intentional. And finally, she reaches the emotional threshold where silence no longer feels like emptiness, it feels like an invitation to act. She doesn't wait for the perfect moment, she doesn't overthink the wording, she simply realizes she doesn't want the distance to stretch any further. She wants clarity, she wants connection, she wants to know whether something real can still grow between you. And the moment she decides to reach out, it won't be because she needs attention, it will be because your silence helped her see your value more clearly than your presence ever could. She returns with sincerity, emotional maturity, and a genuine desire to reconnect, all because the space you created gave her the room to feel everything she had been ignoring.